Hello and welcome to the Agile Innovation Leaders podcast. I'm Ola Ojako. On this podcast, I speak with world-class leaders and doers about themselves and a variety of topics spanning agile, lean innovation, business, leadership, and much more, with actionable takeaways for you, the listener. Hello, everyone. This episode marks the end of season 1 of the Agile Innovation Leaders podcast. However, it's not a final goodbye because we are already working on a new and improved season 2 with an exciting lineup of guests. We'll share more about this in due time. But all you need to know is that after this episode, there will be a bonus episode where I summarize season 1 and then a brief break before the launch of season 2. Again, we'll give you more details in due time. My guest for this episode is Tolu Fagbola. Tolu is the founder of Career Transitioners, a training organization accredited by the BCS, that's the British Computer Society. Tolu himself is a lead trainer at Career Transitioners. Tolu is also a SAFe program consultant and a lean agile professional who has worked on multiple digital transformation programs with organizations in sectors including banking, telecoms, energy and utilities, and transport. During this conversation, Tolu candidly shared some of the lessons he and his team learned from a quote-unquote failed program that they were involved in many years ago. And he also shared his view on the importance of leadership and organizational buy-in for a successful transformation effort. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, my conversation with Tolu. Enjoy. Thank you so much, Tolu, for making the time for this conversation today.
You're welcome, Ola. It's good to be joining you today.
So could you tell us a bit about yourself, please?
Sure. I have been into Agile for about 10 years. I kind of stumbled into Agile when I decided that being a trainer was not enough. So I was and still am a training and development professional. So started off my career in the telecoms industry, leading companies, operational teams, and I moved into training and development. And at a point, I got scared that computers were going to come in and take my job away. So I thought I'd better get on board this IT thing before I become obsolete. So I got into e-learning and I got interested in e-learning development and content development. So I sort of got into sort of developing learning management systems for organizations, and the first ever learning management system I helped develop for a bank went atrocious. It was the traditional waterfall approach. We had a team of developers who were amazing at what they did, but it was just horrible. We had no requirements. We had no stakeholder buy-in. We had no commitments. We just overran, and the plans were just atrocious. So from that point on, I had to learn the hard way that Agile was a much more effective way to deploy solutions and engage in almost any kind of organizational change that involves technology. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into Agile. And since then, I've been working with Agile teams and the training on business analysis and Agile. I'm a big advocate for Agile business analysis and business analysts within Agile teams because I think they are the glue between organization strategy and the development teams. So that's been my sort of journey over the last few years.
It's an interesting story, so thanks for sharing. You said you had a failed project, so it seems like that was the tipping point for you into Agile.
It was an eye-opener because there were so many reasons the program failed. And apart from being naive and inexperienced and very excitable because we were focused on a product without considering the organizational context and a cultural context as well. Just to give you a little bit of background, I deployed these solutions within banks in Nigeria. So I didn't consider the cultural elements of deploying or working on projects that had to do with technology. Yeah, and I learned a lot from that experience. And I think it's made me a much more rounded Agile practitioner today.
Could you tell us a bit more about what you learned? What were the key learnings? I gather that you said there was no consideration for the cultural content.
Yeah. So more than 10 years ago now, when I say we, I mean myself and my team had already sort of introduced this idea of rolling out a learner management system within the organization, and it was signed off and it was agreed, costings agreed, and we thought it was just going to be a matter of deploying the solution within the organization's servers, and the uptake will be great and it will be all fine. But we didn't consider things like organizational change, the fact that a lot of people within that organization were banking on taking training on site in person and moving to an e-learning model was going to be a significant culture change to them, apart from the fact that they get to go away from the desk. Sometimes they get stipends, they get lots of perks. Now, moving to an approach where almost 50% of all the training that they would have had will now be at their desks or at home via an electronic medium was quite a significant change from the user's perspective.
That wouldn't have made you popular.
Yeah, absolutely. It made perfect sense for us. It made perfect sense for the business. They were cutting a lot of costs. It made sense financially and technologically. But culturally, from a user's perspective, it really didn't go down as we imagined. So little things like sort of mapping out a user journey, we failed to consider to understand what the process was for a student, a candidate, or employee to book onto a training course, to take the course, to get feedback, to get the next course, to get their appraisal done, and all the other impacts that one learning event will have on them. So learned a lot in a lot of ways. Another thing that I think was really pertinent learning for me particularly was the impact of operating models. Or the significance of operating models when going through organizational change, because that's what it was. It was significant change for them, but it seemed like an IT project, but it wasn't an IT project. It was a business change product that leveraged IT. So understanding the change to the organizational model, the operating model, the fact that they needed to have an administrator, the fact that they needed to have access, user control, the access rights, the fact that they needed different ways of evaluating learning, all of those things we totally left to the business and they had no clue what they were to do. So now done it very, very differently. So yeah, I'll say I learned a lot from that one experience, and the next program was definitely a lot smoother in the sense that I knew exactly what I needed to do. I knew the learnings that I needed to have, and I knew how I could sort of get my stakeholders buy-in from the start and sort of build stability and develop incrementally and iteratively, have little releases quickly and get feedback very quickly, and increase the uptake of the solution in a way that delivers value to the business and to the users. So it was a lot different the second time around. It still had its own challenges, but yeah.
Yes, I can imagine. I've also been involved in some less than ideal projects, and yes, it makes a whole lot of difference involving all the stakeholders, especially the end right from the onset, so that everyone is at the same table, because there are usually contexts that we would miss if they're not involved right from the onset. So is it all work for you then, Tolu? What leisure activities do you do?
I do much reading these days. Anything outside of my academic journals and books is I probably don't have a lot of time on my hands to do much else. So I'll give you a little picture of my life at the moment. So I work 9 to 5 as a consultant, run a training business in the evenings, developing a learning management system for the commercial market, got a team working on that. And I spend pretty much all of my weekends working on my doctorate. I'm doing a doctorate in education, so I'm in the library or reading or writing a thesis or doing some research, So, I'm pretty maxed out at the moment.
I can imagine. I'm with a lovely young daughter as well. So
yeah, I've got a 4-year-old. Well, she's going to be 4 next month. So I have to schedule time in to take her to Bouncy Castle. Because she doesn't forget now. Very much. I think you told me you were going to take me to Bouncy Castle tomorrow. So it's tomorrow now. So I put in time for that. I'm a massive sports fan and into boxing. The only sport that I have time to watch right now is boxing.
They're interesting. My late dad also liked 2 sports, and boxing was one of them. Football was the other. But what's the attraction? Because I still don't get it.
Okay, so boxing, it's amazing. All you need to do is watch the next Anthony Joshua fight, and you'll know what I'm talking about. He's going to be fighting on 1st of June in New York, Madison Square Garden, and I'm going to be there.
Oh, really? Oh, wow, that's serious. So no PhD, thesis work.
June is my celebration month because it's my birthday, it's my wife's birthday, it's our anniversary. So the first couple of weeks in June is always a holiday. That's the only thing holiday I get through the year.
Well, congratulations to you and your wife in advance. So hopefully your wife is also going with you to Madison Square.
Well, I've told her that I'm going, and if she would like to come.
That doesn't sound like...
She says she will, but I'm not sure she would actually follow through. So No, she's definitely going to come.
Okay. There was a silence before you said, I've told her. It reads a lot to me. Let's move swiftly onto other topics. What would you say is your preferred Agile framework and why?
I can't say I have a preferred Agile framework. I'm a real strong believer in adapting the style, the approach, the framework to the context. So depending on the organizational problem or the problem we're trying to solve, I always look for the right approach or the right framework. I think every single Agile method out there has something to offer. And I don't think there is one method that trumps all. I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all approach. I can tell you the approaches that I have used extensively as opposed to the ones that I prefer. So Scrum is one that I have used extensively. I'm currently working in a skilled Agile environment right now, SAFe Skilled Agile Framework.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with that approach.
I'm an SPC, yes. So,
Oh, fantastic. So you'll know what I'm talking about. So I'm currently working in a skilled Agile framework. I'm working as an Agile coach right now, looking after a couple of Scrum teams, running the PI events and coaching the organization. The teams are mature, but the organization itself is not very mature. So there's a lot of work to do on that front. So we've adapted a little bit. It's not 100% safe, but mostly safe. We do the PI program, increment events. We have our epics, features, stories, and we have multiple Scrum teams. And, we have system demos. We have the Agile release train. We have a lot of the elements of SAFe, and it works perfectly well for organizations looking to, what it says on a tin, scale Agile and use multiple teams. And it's much more effective for enterprise level approach than, let's say, Scrum, which is amazing for individual teams. But a lot of teams have challenges with issues from outside of a team, so the Scrum doesn't account for a lot of issues that reside outside of the team. So I'm an advocate for SAFe, and I'm an advocate for Scrum, Kanban, and sort of very volatile environments with lots of moving BAU activities. I'm an advocate for Lean. There's a new one that I'm high on right now. It's called Flow. I'm an advocate for Flow because
could you tell us a bit more about Flow?
Well, Flow is considered post-agile, where it looks at the challenges that executives within an organization have and guides them through visualizing a lot of their business problems and challenges, and uses a lot of design thinking processes, uses a lot of very genuine customer-centric approaches, and really guides executives upstream in a way that allows them articulate their business problem and the way they would like to solve those business problems very concisely, effectively, efficiently before the midstream teams like Scrum teams kind of take it up and sort of deploy. So I like what Flow is doing in terms of the very visual elements that they adopt. So yeah, I'm a big advocate of a lot of agile approaches, and I think they all have something to offer. And I think the strength of a good agile practitioner is to know which approach suits the right business problem and be able to support an organization regardless of the approach they choose to use, even if it's not agile or a framework within, the agile family.
I agree with you. The phrase I use is that, these frameworks and methodologies are really to be considered as tools in a toolbox. So,
yes,
you pull out the one you need depending on the context of the task or the objective at hand. So that brings me to the next question. Do you think that, so for example, if an organization starts off with Scrum, must they stick with Scrum all through the life cycle of a program or a project? Or is it possible to, at various stages, maybe change or even mix frameworks?
I think that's a loaded question. There are lots of different elements to that question. So I'll answer some part of it. The part about should organizations change their approach midway through a program, I think that's a very interesting question. I'm a big advocate for being clear on how you're going to do the work. You've committed to an approach, then I believe you should follow through until it doesn't serve you anymore. On the other hand, there is the concept of agile being adaptable and flexible. So organizations really should, in my opinion, be flexible and really look at what approach works best for that period and for that particular business problem they're trying to solve. So I think it almost has to be on a case-by-case basis, and I don't think there should be a rule that says you should or shouldn't when it comes to agile, because environmental contexts change all the time, and organizations need to be flexible and adaptable and nimble, and you've got to and decisive, but also reduce or minimize the risk and minimize the chaos, and give the teams and the individuals some sort of stability from the perspective of, should I call it the cadence that they work within?
Yes.
Because a lot of the things that Scrum sort of advocates is that you get better and better and you get more effective the more you get into a rhythm. So that rhythm, I think, is important. So I don't think organizations should stop and start without just course. I do think they should be flexible and adaptable depending on the context. I don't know if I answered your question the way you'd like.
No, it's not about how I like, it's about, your view. You said organizations should be committed to following a framework or a course of action until it no longer serves them. What would be the indicators that maybe an approach is no longer serving?
For me, the biggest indicator will be size of the personnel. Let's say you were a 10-person team and you've had to double, or you're doing so well, your product is selling so well, you've had to double in size. Well, you kind of need to have guardrails now, where you could, let the team do certain things, but now you need to maybe adapt the framework. Maybe you do something slightly different. I think the size is probably the biggest indicator for me of when you need to change. On the other hand, significant political factors or external factors that you have to react to, that's significant, not just because our competitor is doing a little better this quarter, we've got to change our approach. But yeah,
do you have any
significant?
What kind of
Brexit? Let's say something like a political factor like Brexit. Now you've got to create a whole new business model. Well, you were doing something for competition locally, now you've got to do it internationally. Well, kind of need a slightly different approach, stuff like that. Or there's a new entry in the market and it's really sort of having an adverse effect. You might need to change the way you do things. So significant external factors, I think, will be another indicator for me. Doubling in size or significant increase in personnel will be an indicator. But reasons like new manager, I don't think should result in changing your agile approaches because a new manager likes Kanban, the old one likes Scrum. So I don't think that happened, by the way.
That's a brilliant response to the question. I'm sure that the audience, there might be people with different viewpoints as well as people who agree with what you say. What would be your tips for effectively managing agile teams?
For me, I think the one thing that I've learned a lot over the last few years is being disciplined, where agile almost has this paradoxical effect where it's modes flexibility and agility and being nimble, but it's, on the other hand, it could potentially create a lackadaisical approach. So being able to kind of find that balance where you're able to be disciplined and committed to the process that you've chosen to follow. It's very easy. So little things like protect the team or only the team should speak at daily stand-ups. It's so easy to let it go out of hand. It's so easy where a solution architect might just decide to come in, but they can't help themselves and they've just got to say something. And then it becomes a habit and then it affects the morale of the team and then the team are not empowered anymore. And then the team starts to look to that solution architect for decisions. And all of a sudden you've lost the whole essence of why you're doing what you're doing in the first place. So being disciplined, I think, is one of the things that I would always say should be something a Scrum Master should have on their priority list. And it's very easy to be not disciplined, which is why I make that a point to be disciplined.
How can you blend being disciplined with the notion that the Scrum Master is a servant leader?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. For me, the concept of servant leadership is exactly what it says on the theme, being able to support the team in a way that's coaching rather than telling or managing. So when you are doing that with the team, you're being a servant leader to the team. Now, some of the things that we do as Scrum Masters or Agile practitioners, things that we commit to outside of the team. So maybe the relationship between the Scrum Master and the product owner it still has to have that element of Scrum, of servant leadership, but also consider that the product owner also needs support and also needs coaching as well. And also not let the Scrum Master be the non-servant leader. I've seen situations where product owners direct the team in a way that's not agile and kind of throw stuff into the backlog mid-sprints and stuff like that. So being able to find that balance between coaching and ensuring that the team are protected, as well as ensuring that the team follow the process and the organization also follows the process. So yeah, it's a hard thing to balance, but having that at the back of your mind as an Agile practitioner or Scrum Master is very, very important. Being able to still be a servant leader, but still be strong enough to be able to protect the team. And being able to protect the team means having to have very difficult conversations with managers or executives outside of the team, or having to sort of coach leaders of an organization about what the team are doing. They could be very difficult conversations, but your servant leadership, in my opinion, is to the team. And to the organization is more of a coach rather than a servant leader to the organization. I believe your duty to the organization is to coach the organization and help them understand what the team is committed to and what the team are doing and how the team are doing it. But it does require some level of strength and gravitas and some level of ability to be able to get that ability for the team to trust you as a Scrum Master, to be able to protect them. I've seen Scrum Masters that are amazing with the team don't have confidence that they can protect them outside of a team. The team don't have confidence that if they go to that PI meeting or if they go to that manager's meeting, they would not come back with 20 more tasks for them to do. To be able to have that balance of servant leadership and strength outside of the team, I think is really, really important. And understanding the process is really important. And that's why I said discipline. So to understand what the commitment is that you're making, I think it really does help.
It's all well and good. And I totally agree with what you've said. However, in the, say, spirit of being disciplined and protecting the team, and you're speaking to, say, leadership, where does leadership buy-in come in here? Because if they're not involved, do you think you can still be as effective as an Agile coach or Scrum Master in an organization?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question, and that's always going to be a very tough question. And depending on the kind of organization it is, the level of organizational support will vary. And for me, I believe it's really important to have organizational support. But in my experience, it isn't the norm to have organizational support right from the top. It is, in my experience, not always the case that you will have organizational support all the way to the top. It's amazing when you do. One of the HAs that I worked for a few years ago had Lean. They adopted Lean from top to bottom. MD would come to the boards and would be part of the teams. That was great. Everybody knew what it was and they were committed to it, and it was very productive. On the other hand, I can say it's not very many organizations are like that. Most organizations that I've worked with will say they are adopting an Agile approach at a sort of board level or senior management level, but what they really are doing is developing solutions using Agile teams. So the decisions, the program level activities are not quite Agile, except of course they start to something like SAFe. They're usually still the traditional way of work breakdown structures and project management and all of that stuff still exists. And most times Agile teams are fighting against the tide each time within their teams. They're doing great within the teams, but the challenges come from outside of the team. So yes, it's great to have organizational support, but I think we're still away from having most organizations commit to Agile from the top all the way down to the bottom. I think most organizations still find it difficult to let go, I think is the word I'd like to use for that. And for us as Agile practitioners, is to continue to coach and have the ability to positively influence them and help them understand that there are other Agile approaches that they can adopt that will serve them well strategically at a strategic level. Because I think that's where the challenges are. They don't realize that there are Agile approaches that work at a strategic level. For most strategic level stakeholders, Agile is for developers. Agile is for the teams. Agile is for downstream activities. They still do what they do organizationally. And, they've always done it that way. So that's the way it's always going to be. So it's being able to educate them a little bit and help them understand that there are other ways to do it, and it will have a positive impact on the teams that they already have working in agile ways.
Interesting. So how can the audience reach you, find out more about what you do?
Yeah, the email is probably the best way to reach me. And once in a while, Instagram, Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will put these in the show notes. So you said email, Instagram, and Twitter. What's your email address, please?
Email is tolu@careertransitioners.com. Tolu@careertransitioners.com.
Could you spell that, please?
Career as in CAREER. Transitioners as in TRANSITIONERS.com.
Okay.
Careertransitioners.com.
All together, no spaces.
All together, no spaces or hyphens.
Okay.
And
Twitter?
Twitter, C Transitioners. Instagram, C Transitioners, @C Transitioners, and Facebook, Career Transitioners.
Okay. We'll put these in the show notes. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion?
Yeah, sure. The one thing I like to say is to anybody who's looking to get into Agile is that I believe that Agile isn't one method, framework, technique, and it definitely isn't IT. Agile is a philosophy. Agile is a way of thinking. Agile is a way of working, and understanding what Agile is really important. And to really truly embody the Agile principles and Agile manifesto, and understand as many tools and techniques within the Agile family as you possibly can. And I always tell my students, start with Scrum and then build on that. And yeah, you can grow from there.
Great. So the other thing is, you mentioned you run some training events. Are they public, and where can one find out your schedule?
Yeah. So website, careertransitioners.com. We've got our courses on there. So we're BCS Certified Training Provider as well.
Okay.
So we run a lot of courses in business analysis, Scrum, Agile, BA. I'm a big advocate of business analysis within Agile environments and the role of BAs within Agile. I think it's really, really important to have someone, a role that can bridge the gap between strategy and IT, or strategy and the development team.
Business analysts are very important, definitely. Thank you so much, Tolu, for your time. It's been a great pleasure speaking with you. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
That's all we have for now. Thanks for listening. If you like this show, do subscribe at www.agileinnovationleaders.com. That's agileinnovationleaders.com, or your favorite podcast provider. Also share with friends, and do leave a review on iTunes. This would help others find this show. I'd also love to hear from you, so please drop me an email at ola@agileinnovationleaders.com. Take care and God bless.